Good morning, Lakeshore Collegiate Institute and the Lakeshore community. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, JIGME KELSANG. Welcome back to another episode of the JIGME KELSANG Show. On today's episode, I'm bringing a very special, exclusive interview with a very special guest who has graciously took his time out of his busy schedule to join me here today. Joining me now on the phone is the man himself, Mr. Steve Dangle. Before I formally introduce Steve here on the JIGME KELSANG Show, I just want to give a brief introduction about him. Steve Dangle is a Canadian YouTuber and sports journalist for Sportsnet. He is known for his Leafs fan reaction videos, which he makes after every Leafs games. Steve is also the co-host of the Steve Dangle podcast with the noted Quebecois fancy man Adam Wilde and also Jesse Blake. Before fame, Steve created his channel on February 25th, 2007. The very first video he posted was on March 1st, 2007. Since then, Steve has garnered more than 90,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel since its creation. So now, this is the time you all have been waiting for. So without further ado, I would now like to formally welcome Mr. Steve Dangle to the JIGME KELSANG Show. Thank you, Steve, and welcome.
Thank you, JIGME. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so we'll get started. So with the first question I had for you is, who or what inspired you to get into hockey?
I'm not really sure. I've sort of been a hockey fan since before I can even remember. Some of my earliest hockey memories have to do with hockey, and I think that means I sort of liked it since literally before I can remember. But luckily, the Leafs were really good when I was a kid. I loved watching Felix Potvin make all kinds of big saves, and I don't know, I just sort of fell in love with it from there.
Ah, okay. Interesting. And connecting back to that question, how long have you been a Leafs fan for?
I'm going to go with, I'm almost 31 years old, so it probably took me a couple years to figure out how to talk, and then I would say after that I've been a Leafs fan, so maybe 29 years.
Oh, okay. So you've been a long time Leaf fan, to say. So what was your initial reaction when you first found out that John Tavares signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs? And did you ever believe he would come to the Toronto Maple Leafs?
No, I was in utter disbelief, because the Leafs already have some good centers on their team, Austin Matthews and Nazem Kadri. I didn't think they would go out and find another center, even though Tavares is a very good one. But also, for many years, there were all sorts of players rumored to be coming to the Leafs, and it never actually happened. So Tavares was sort of the first superstar to join the Leafs as a free agent. And for it to happen now, while the Leafs are just hitting their stride, was a big surprise and a welcome surprise.
Mm-hmm. So in your opinion, what do you think the Leafs need to do in order to finally get past the first round in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
I think the Leafs, if they keep playing their game and they stop getting in their own way, I think they can get past the first round of the playoffs. People talk about last year's series against the Bruins like the Bruins killed the Leafs. It's not true. The Leafs were winning heading into the third period of the seventh game. They could have just as easily won that series, a bounce here, a bounce there. It's not as if they got swept. So I think this year with better center depth, and hopefully, Freddie Anderson can play his best and Mike Babcock gets a little creative, the Leafs should be able to get past Boston. And then after that, I mean, the playoffs are kind of they're a bit of a crapshoot, right? Because anything can happen. Guys can get injured, and you're sort of locked in there with the team. So you're not necessarily playing your game specifically. You're sort of catering your defense and offense to the other team because you're locked in there for 4 to 7 games.
Yeah,
I think the Leafs have a shot, just like they did last year.
Mm-hmm. So in all honesty, do you believe the Leafs have a chance to win the Stanley Cup in, let's say, the next 1 or 2 years?
Oh, yes. I believe the Leafs could win a cup in the next 1 or 2 years. The issue, more so than Boston, is Tampa Bay. I mean, they're just such a monstrous team. So this year is definitely Tampa's year to go for the Stanley Cup. Next year, though, a lot of fuss has been made about the Leafs salary cap situation. Tampa's isn't very nice either. So I think next year, they'll continue to be contenders.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. So like Kyle Dubas, like in your opinion, how good has he been early on in his stint as the general manager of the Maple Leafs?
I think Dubas has been really good at development. He's been very smart about not allowing young players to join the Leafs until they're absolutely ready. He's not doing any of this up and down treatment, sort of like how the Oilers are doing with some of their prospects, like Jesse Puljujarvi and Kailer Yamamoto. He's letting players sort of over-ripen in the AHL, so I think that's very good. Getting John Tavares was a huge victory for him, obviously. Mm-hmm. The Jake Muzzin trade was bold, and I think that was a big win because not only is he a Leaf this year, but he'll be a Leaf next year. Mm-hmm. I like the Nick Patan trade. The only criticism I would have is at this deadline, he didn't go out and get a defenseman. Now, I don't mean, obviously Jake Muzzin is fine, but they knew that Jake Gardner was hurt and could be out for a while. And then they're one injury away from disaster.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that injury happened. Dermott got hurt. And I know they've wanted to call Calle Rosen up for some time, but he's hurt as well. So I was surprised they didn't go out and spend, a late round pick on a player like a Michael Del Zotto or a Nathan Beaulieu. But he's clearly confident in the group that he's got.
Mm-hmm. So at what age, because now you're posting YouTube videos and like talking about all the Leaf game recaps and previews and like trades that happened with the Leafs and everything. So I want to know, at what age did you get into YouTube and creating videos?
I started making videos in 2007, and the Leafs lost their first game of the year that season in the 2007-2008 season. And I just had a lot of opinions about it. And it was the first time the Leafs had been playing since I had gotten a webcam. And so I guess I was just drawn to it magnetically. And, one thing led to another. And I decided to make a video after every Leafs game. And what surprised me is more people than just my friends started watching them. And it would get featured on a blog, and a few dozen people would see it. And over time, that turned into 100, and then a few hundred, and then a few thousand. And now to date, I just passed 25 million views ever. So it's an exponential thing.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever believe in your wildest dreams that you would become this popular on YouTube?
No, never. I didn't think anyone had the patience to listen to me yell and scream about my favorite hockey team, but I'm glad they do. And I think anyone who watches my videos, they sort of get the pain of being a Leafs fan, but more importantly, they understand that the point of all sports is just to have fun. So I have a weird channel, but I'm just trying to have fun with it, and I think people just have fun.
Oh, okay. So the next question I have for you is, what is the experience like working as a content contributor at Sportsnet?
Oh, it's been great. I'm surprised. I always get surprised when I get opportunities, and Sportsnet called me a few years ago for a behind-the-scenes role, and then after a while, because they knew of my YouTube work and the podcast, they decided to offer me a job as a contributor, just making content for them for a living, and it's great. I get to work with Jeff Merrick sometimes, and some players I watched growing up. I just did some commercials with Mark Savard, so it's pretty surreal, pretty fun.
Oh, okay. And I mean, it's crazy to think, because this recently just happened. Legendary Ted Lindsay passes away. What are your thoughts?
Well, Ted Lindsay was an amazing hockey player, but he was a better person, and he left his legacy on the game. You know, he's in a class of player like John Beliveau and Johnny Bauer, who were Hockey Hall of Fame players, but were even better people. And Ted Lindsay boycotted his own Hockey Hall of Fame induction ceremony because it was policy that your wife and children could not come. And he said that was rubbish, and he stuck up for it. And what I like to think about is at the time, I bet people called him, ridiculous or arrogant for believing that he should get special treatment. And now, decades later, we know that he's on the right side of history. Of course, you should be able to bring your wife. Of course, you should be able to bring your significant other. Of course, you should be able to bring your children. And he was instrumental in forming the players' union and sticking up for the players and making sure they weren't taken advantage of. So, as good as a player as he was even a better person.
Mm-hmm. So, what was the experience like working as an associate producer at CBC?
Well, working at CBC was fun. It's such a historic sort of building, and I'm fortunate to still work in that building, although I'm a sportsman. But it's fun, and you never get used to seeing Don Cherry or Ron McLean walk through the halls. It's pretty fun.
Mm-hmm. And so, Steve, we want to know what inspired you or got you into creating your own podcast show.
My co-host and I, Adam Wild, we came up with the idea when we were still in grade 11. And it took a number of years for us to actually get the idea off the ground. You know, he kept moving, from province to province looking for jobs. And I was obviously in school and had no idea what I was doing. But once we got to a place in our lives where we were a little bit more settled, we decided, let's actually do this. And I think the reason that we still do it is sort of what I was saying with the videos. We don't do it because it's a job. We do it because we have fun with it. And we just sit around talking hockey, I think like anybody would. It's just people happen to listen.
Mm-hmm. So, Steve, everyone says that consistency is so important when it comes to YouTube or whatever you want to do. And so, in your opinion, why is consistency so important?
Well, consistency is important because people know what to expect from you. If you make a video after every Leafs game and that's what you say you're going to do, that's what you better do. If you say you're going to deliver 2 podcasts a week, that's what you better do. Because, people expect that of you. I think people are less interested in the wild card. Now, there's still YouTubers that I enjoy watching who have sporadic schedules, like Bill Wirtz is a really fun one. But, you just got to consistently bring the same effort to every video. You can get creative. So I guess you can be consistently inconsistent in that regard. You always have to bring something different. But if you bring the same effort and, don't make one video that's 20 minutes and then another video that's 2 necessarily, people will sort of learn what to expect from you.
Mm-hmm. Because, I myself are learning how to become consistent with my content, because now that I'm creating podcasts from my high school podcast show, LC Radio 1, and also my own show, the JIGME KELSANG show. So I'm trying to learn from other YouTubers to see what it's like to be consistent with your content, upload another thing, right? And then edit and then go through everything. But I think people don't really realize how stressful it can be to edit an hour long footage thing. And then to go through that and then post it a day after, I think it's do one thing, do the other, do one thing, do the other. So it gets stressful at times, but what kind of advices would you give people who are going through that phase?
Well, I would say make sure you're enjoying it, because editing can be tedious and it's not always fun. But, I think sound young and ambitious, and I speak to a lot of folks who are young and ambitious. And you got to remember to just allow yourself to sort of be a high school student, right? Allow yourself to be a teenager. It's good to work hard, and you should work hard, but don't grow up before you need to, I would say. So just as a young person, you just need to focus on acquiring more and more tools. Now, that doesn't mean hardware or things of that nature. You're figuring out timing. You're figuring out, your creativity. You're figuring out how to use a camera. You're figuring out writing. You're figuring out sound. You're figuring out all kinds of things. So I would say make sure you're having fun and make sure you're learning, and everything else should take care of itself.
Okay. So the next question I had is there any advices you would give to the younger generation like me regarding chasing your dreams and maybe becoming popular like you?
Yeah, I would say it has to do with consistency. So many people I speak to, they want to make videos or do a podcast, and they try it for a week or 2 weeks or maybe even 6 months, and then they stop doing it. Well, I said to have fun, and I said to learn. Well, if you stop doing it, you're not going to learn, and if you're not doing it, how are you going to have any fun? And maybe you stop doing it because you weren't having fun, and that's fine. But
yeah,
I think if you're having fun and you're learning, you're going to win.
Mm-hmm. Just to put it out there to you is I had one friend who's actually a big fan of yours. His name is Sean, and if you can say hello to Sean for me, that would be great.
Hey Sean, it's Steve Dangle. Don't mess around too much during exams. All right, pass all your classes. Everyone will be proud of you.
Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate that. Because I tried to get him on here. I'm like, Steve Dangle. I'm gonna be speaking to him for an interview, right? And then he's like, no way. So I told him to come down, but unfortunately he isn't here. He had to go. But I really appreciate you doing this for him and just saying hello to him, because I think this would really make his day. He couldn't believe that I actually got you on for the interview, and this is actually, quite frankly, my dream come true, because I never in my wildest dreams thought I would get the Steve Dangle on my show. It's like something you think about as a childhood dream, watching your YouTube videos and learning from you. And I laugh every time you post a video, because it's like you're funny, but also like you speak so much truth, really. Because
I appreciate that very much, JIGME, but aim higher.
Yeah, it's just because it's young people like you who teach other young people like me to keep chasing your dreams. Because if you at least put your mind to something, you can achieve anything. Then sky's the limit. I think you're really putting it out there, and it's making a clear statement to people that never give up, because anything is possible in life. And I think that that really resonated with me and will resonate with many other people and the generations to come. So thank you, Steve, for doing that. You are an inspiration. I'm so glad I had the chance to speak with you, and this is a dream come true. Still, I can't believe it. Yeah, and say hi to Adam and Jesse for me, eh?
I absolutely will, and tell Sean he owes you something.
Yeah. And if you could also shout me out on your podcast show, because that'd be so great.
I'll try to remember, man. We're not sure when we're gonna do the next one.
Okay. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap the show up right here. Thank you everybody for watching and listening to this episode of the JIGME KELSANG Show. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it for you guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, then hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn your post notifications on. That way you won't miss a thing. You'll be notified every time I post something new on my channel. Don't forget to follow all of my social media platforms. I'll leave them down below in the description below. Other than that, my name is JIGME KELSANG, and you have been listening to and watching the JIGME KELSANG Show exclusive interview with the man himself, Mr. Steve Dangle. Thank you, Steve, and I'll speak with you very soon.
Sure. Take care, JIGME.
All right. Thank you. Bye, Steve.
Bye. Take care.